Welcome to the third episode of SolCast. Today is World Environment Day and we have something special for you guys. We'll be talking about solar energy for homes and how it can help you be more sustainable financially as well as for the environment. To do this, we have with us as usual Mux. We also have a very special guest, Mr. Subramaniam, who is an ex-Navy officer and is now settled in Bangalore. Today, he is on his way to building and living a now 100% sustainable home, sustainable right from his energy to his water usage. Together, we will go through some of the most common and important questions around solar in a residential setting. This is the first part of the episode. Expect to see the rest of the episode in a few more parts released through the day. To kick things off, let's start off at the very bottom. Why are we talking about residential solar today?
Yeah, so I think the first wave of solar has obviously touched the utility scale solar, which we've talked about extensively in the previous podcasts, where large megawatts and megawatts or gigawatts of solar has been installed on ground mount systems in land and water as well. And the second wave has been the commercial industrial rooftop, and the third wave where we have early adopters taking on, and this will be the most thriving segment in the upcoming years. I feel is the residential segment, and what we have sitting with us, Mr. Subramaniam, one of the early adopters of residential solar, who's installed a brand new hybrid system, which has been up and running for over
almost a year
now, last June. So I think that's what we'll focus on in this segment, and I feel this is the somewhat the underserved segment in the market because of a lot of things, including lack of knowledge and potentially low penetration rates because of what although the government has taken some steps, it has probably not reached the masses yet, and we will talk a little bit more during the segment. Mr. Subramaniam, you want to say something as the introduction?
Yeah, the reason I went in for the residential scale solar plant was mainly self-sufficiency. It would make me really independent of the grid, and I wouldn't have to really bother whether my service provider is providing me quality power or not. That's the key, which ensured that I went in for this particular solution.
Fantastic. Take it from there, Prasanna.
Now that is great for context. As we know, solar solutions haven't reached as many homes as they have reached commercial and industrial entities. Is upfront capital a factor for this? And in a wider context, is this a financial boon or burden for homes?
Yeah, as Mux brought out, the third wave, where we have the residential people going in for solar systems. Probably I'm one of the early adopters of the system. I'm reminded of around 17 to 18 years back when we had solar water heaters which came into our homes. And I was an early adopter in using a solar water heater system also. Today, if I just stand on top of my house, I see that the solar water heater is an ubiquitous thing which is probably present on every single residential house. I would see the same scenario happening and panning out here too. To give a context, probably 17, 18 years back, a solar water heater used to cost around 25,000. Today it costs 20,000. Even after 18 years, the price may have slightly dropped, but look at the inflation, the purchasing power. And the same thing would probably extend to the solar systems for electricity generation also. Yes, at this point of time, the cost is slightly high, but I would look at it from two perspectives. I would look at it as a boon, not a bane, primarily for the reason that it ensures that I am not dependent on the grid in any kind of a condition. I am independent of the grid. A second is that I am able to generate the power and be able to give it back to the grid. So in that sense, I am utilizing the resources very efficiently.
Fantastic. I think one distinction in what Mr. Subramaniam saying is that he has installed obviously a hybrid sort of a system, which involves a unique hybrid inverter which takes the power from solar, charges the battery, as well as runs all the loads during the day and manages the nighttime loads, as well as pump excess power during the day when the load is not happening, or when the battery is full, and when the battery is full, to the grid. So that's a fairly self-sufficient, and also he is a perfect example of what we call in the new age world as prosumers. So he's not only consuming but also producing energy and selling the energy to the grid. So this is fantastic, and those systems are when you get into a hybrid configuration because of the battery and the more sophisticated inverter that is being used in the charge controller and other things are more expensive than the typical grid tied. In a scenario where where the grid is fairly stable, a grid tied system is sufficient, and in those cases the costs are much lower than what Mr. Subramaniam would have incurred, right? So that's the distinction. But I think he has taken a call early to go for a hybrid system because he knows very well. He's an electrical engineer himself. He knows the quality of the grid that's present in his current locality, which is not per se equivalent to other localities. Right?
Great. One thing I wanted to bring in here, and which the conversation seems to have led to, is how reliable is solar as compared to the normal grid? Is it more reliable? How has your experience been, Mr. Subramaniam?
Yeah, the thing was that I have installed the system slightly less than a year ago. It was in the June of last year that I installed the system, and in past 1 year, I've been quite happy with the system. I just got a small instance here. I stay in Bangalore, and the rains which happened last year was probably one in a kind of a century kind of an event. It rained almost around 1,200 millimeters. Even in such kind of a scenario of heavy rains, my system continued to function. All my lighting and home loads were adequately serviced by the solar system. We have a peculiar situation where during the rains there is an outage from the grid company to protect their assets. In spite of that happening, I was never in a situation where I didn't have power.
That's fantastic.
So that's something which was a good experience which I have had for the past 1 year.
That's fantastic. I think the other thing, Mr. Subramaniam, you might remember last year when you were facing all these fluctuations from the utility power. Are those fluctuations not visible now, or what do you think? Has the grid magically improved, or is since you're using more solar power, has this improved the situation?
Yeah, the grid power has stabilized to an extent because the last mile link there was a problem, and that has been resolved from the grid side, and the power supply is quite stable from the grid supply. But notwithstanding the stability of the power supply, we do have brownouts and blackouts, which ensure that power supply is interpreted at various points of the day, and then I automatically have to rely on the solar power for powering up my house.
I think that's a fair point. And because of that, basically you haven't seen any, because the switching is almost automatic to solar, so you haven't seen.
Yeah, there is no case where I've had to face a outage at my home, and I've had a continuous uninterrupted power supply. The battery backup in my home, which is part of the solar power system, is sized in such a manner that it caters for the entire load, even in cases where the sunlight is not available or the grid is not available.
I think that's the key, right? So it's an intricate system where you have power generation from solar, load consumption, which is variable with time during the day, as well as availability of grid, which is also a question. And we are trying to minimize the use of grid. So the design of the system is somewhat complex, but it's not that complex, but it is very doable. And the sizing of the battery is one of the very, very key things, which obviously we worked with him and designed appropriately.
As a user, what I would say is that the design is limited to the the installer, and after that it's transparent as probably switching on a TV or using a mobile. So you don't have to have much knowledge about what is the innards of what's actually happening. But since I'm an electrical engineer, I have the habit of tinkering around, and so I've been looking at exploiting the system to the hilt. So that is my interest. But as a lay user, you really don't have to do anything much. When the system is up and running, you can rest assured that things will keep ticking.
So, solar energy does seem to be more reliable than the grid in the long term as well. Since we also talked about hybrid setups, and I'm sure this is one of the most important questions for our listeners too, Mr. Subramaniam, how have your electrical costs dropped since you installed your hybrid setup? Are there any long term benefits that you can see or expect?
Yeah. The thing is that when you look at the consumption pattern which I have seen, the fact which has emerged is that there is directly because I'm a net seller to the grid now. Typically, I used to consume around 180 to 200 units a month before the installation of the solar system. Today, I probably consume only around 100 units per month, with me exporting almost around 350 to 400 units per month. So my net addition is around 300 odd units. So what I would say is that my benefit would be around what I get back from the grid company is around 2000 rupees, and I was paying probably around 1200 rupees earlier. So my net savings is 3000 plus in a month.
And this is a 3 kilowatt.
Yeah, this is a 3 kilowatt system with an overclocked by one additional kilowatt. So effectively, what I have is that I have a net saving of around 3000 rupees per month. 2000 rupees coming to me into my pockets, and 1000 rupees is what I saved otherwise, because my consumption used to be what I used to pay for earlier.
So this tells you the scheme that the government has come up with is based on obviously rated capacity of the building, and in some cases the consumption may or may not be up to the rated capacity, and hence the excess power is generated, and you get actually the government actually pays for it, unlike several other states, right? So this is the additional advantage you have with the system on your roof. Okay.
That's it for this part. Keep your eye out for the next one.